Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Will Hubner here with Mark Mashashik. We got an exciting episode today. We're going to be talking about neuropathic pain syndromes. We're going to go over Boogie's knee. Going to take some questions from the audience. We're going to go over Antonio Brown's shenanigans and go through kind of a takeaways from week 2 preseason. And then we're going to finish off with the NFC West predictions. So Mark, starting it off, neuropathic pain syndromes. What are we talking about?
Yeah, questions about when people have pain. People know they've got muscles and different structures, but sometimes people don't think of nerves as actual physical structures in their body that could have inflammation around it, or impingements, or compressions. Take me through, like, if you're treating a patient and let's say they come in with adhesive capsulitis, but as you're examining them, you think there could be a neural component to that. What are some things you're looking for to try to nail down that neuropathic pain?
Well, sure. I think anytime you're looking at a specific body part and you're thinking it's orthopedic, right? You're thinking it's the muscle, you're thinking it's the joint. You always have to look above at the neck, right? Especially if we're talking upper body. So if you have adhesive capsulitis in the shoulders as your diagnosis,
sure,
and I'm going to assess shoulder motion, well, I want to see how far you can move that shoulder, but then I'm going to add some positions of the neck to put tension on nerves and see if that affects the shoulder at all. If it's truly just a shoulder issue, then me changing the position of the neck or putting you in these provocational positions where we're putting more tension on nerves shouldn't really change the assessment that we're doing. If I'm noticing, hey, I moved the neck a little bit here and there, and now all of a sudden your shoulder motion is decreased or increased, or we've changed pain, well, then I'm going to start going down the pathway and doing a little bit more of a neurological exam and seeing how much the neck is involved and if the nerve is causing some of the dysfunction.
Right. So basically what you're saying is there's only a certain amount of structures that cross the shoulder joint.
Correct.
You've got specific muscles. You have the deltoid muscles of the rotator cuff. If the neck is affecting motion down into the arm or shoulder, it has to be a tissue that crosses multiple joints, like neural tissues, vascular tissues, or potentially fascial tissues or skin tissues.
Yeah, so I think if we're talking about nerve, right? So say we're kind of suspecting that the nerves are involved. Nerves can present in essentially 2 ways if we want to break it down. So you can have a compression on a nerve when, think of a herniated disc or a pinched disc, right? We hear about these all the time. Essentially what's happening is that the disc is pushing onto the spinal cord and it's causing compression, which will then send symptoms along the course of that nerve. So you get symptoms from your neck all the way down to your fingers.
What type of symptoms would you usually get with a compressive type of injury?
Well, certainly. I mean, anytime we're talking about nerves, you can have, everybody's a little bit different. So you hear burning, you hear shooting, sharp pain, a knife is stabbing me, a headache in my thumb. You can hear any of these random things. Don't write them off. It could just be coming from the nerve. But if there is a true compression, I like to think of it as like a garden hose, right? So if you compression or create a kink in the hose, right? Well, no water is going to be able to flow past that kink. You've kind of cut that off right there. So what you would expect in terms of an evaluation, well, nothing's going to get past wherever the compression is in the nerve. So you're going to have loss of reflexes. You're going to have decreased or no sensation below where that compression is.
So decreased sympathetic activity below that injury.
Correct.
And usually more types of like a numbness type feeling as opposed to an extreme pain like you might see with what's the other type? Inflammatory?
Yeah, inflammatory. So using that same kind of model, right? Instead of the kink in the hose, now imagine you just have a crazy amount of water pressure going through that hose, right? So the water is getting through, but it's getting through too rapidly, right? It's creating problems. It may even be too much pressure going in, and you start to see the hose actually kind of expand a little bit, right? So when you think about nerves, we're talking about electrical current, right? Going from the brain down into the muscle. So if we're talking about current with the compression, you're having a loss of current. The electricity just can't get through. If we're talking inflammatory, there's too much electricity.
So now it's the opposite. Now we have an oversympathetic response. These are people who are like really anxious, coming in a lot of pain. You're seeing potentially changes in other changes in skin color or potentially in hair growth. If it's on the extreme side, it could be on the more mild side as well.
Definitely. And if you're talking inflammation, I mean, these are going to be a simple test that we like to do is run a pinwheel down somebody's arm.
Yeah.
Right? So a pinwheel is something that's, they call it a noxious stimuli, right? It's an uncomfortable stimulus, right? It's not supposed to be feeling good. So if I run that down a healthy person's arm, they're going to say, yeah, that's uncomfortable. It's not unbearable. That's fine. If I run it down somebody that has a compressed nerve, they're going to say, I don't really feel that much. You compare it to the other side, they say, yeah, I feel it much more on my unaffected side. If they have an inflammatory aspect, they're going to say, that hurts so bad. You just don't do that again. That's a 8 out of 10 pain. And then similarly, if the nerve is inflamed, what you'll start to notice is you run that pinwheel one time down the arm, they say it's an 8 out of 10 pain. You say, okay, let me check it again. Maybe it's just a fluke. You run it down again. Well, now it just went to a 9 out of 10 pain. You run it again, it's a 10 out of 10 pain. So you get this, they call it temporal summation, where the symptoms kind of impact each other. And now you're starting to flare patients up pretty easily. So in terms of physical therapy treatment, we all have the patients that, you work on them and you maybe do some soft tissue, you get the joints moving, and they come back and they're just saying, that hurts so much after last session. Please, can we change up the treatment session? And you're saying, going back to your original thing, well, it's adhesive capsulitis, so I really need to do these joint mobilizations and get the joint moving, and it's just flaring them up because you're missing the picture of the inflamed nerve.
You might be doing the exact thing that they don't need.
Right.
So when you're saying, what are you looking for on examination as far as from the neck to the upper extremity? What are you looking for someone who's compressed, and what are you looking for someone who is inflamed?
Sure. So let's use the example of, say you can't raise your arm above your head, right? So we'll say shoulder flexion.
Yeah.
So you raise your arm up overhead and maybe you get to 100 degrees, right? And so normal, what we say, 150, 160, we want more than 100, right?
Right.
So they go to 100 degrees, they say, yeah, it's a little bit painful, or it just feels like I can't go any further. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to position the neck towards the side of that they're having pain towards, right? So from a neck perspective, I'm compressing nerves. So if there was a compressed nerve, I would expect either a decreased amount of motion, so maybe instead of 100, now they have 80, or if they gain motion from just the other end, we're actually peripherally, we are taking up some slack on that nerve. So if it's an inflamed nerve, you should actually gain some motion. So by changing the neck position, we can tell if it's if there's a nerve position, or if it's compressed, or if it's inflamed.
For the layman, if we think of just the nervous system, the nerve going from the brain to the arm as a piece of floss, if we move the head away, we're tensing the nerve, and if we move it towards, we're putting on slack. So for an inflamed or tension-based issue, we would expect the symptoms to increase with the head moving away and decrease with it moving towards. Where if it was being compressed, we'd expect it to increase with the head going towards, compressing it further.
And when we're saying compression, we're talking about at the actual vertebrae itself of the spine. Really, we're talking about discs getting compressed. If I side bend you towards, we're compressing discs on that side. So if you get an MRI, that's why imaging makes it so tough, right? Like, we're always taught as physical therapists not to rely strictly on imaging, right? Because anybody over the age of 30 is going to have a good chance of having some sort of herniated disc or some dysfunctional finding on an MRI. But just because you have that, it could still be inflamed. That compression that you're seeing on an MRI might not actually be causing any symptoms. And so if you treat based on just an MRI, you may miss this inflamed aspect, and you're going to be treating the wrong direction and maybe flaring them up. Or I've even seen unnecessary surgeries in the past where person gets the surgery to decompress a part of their spine, but that wasn't the issue, and there's 3 months later having the same.
Yeah, well, it seems like to treat these two things, whether it's the compression or the inflammation with tension, you've got to go in and do mobilization while slowly bringing up the slack on the nerve to a balance. You don't want to overdo that, or you could flare this patient up a lot.
Yes.
After you do that, is there any type of neuroreed that you can do for specifically, we know there's a lot of PNF or proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation techniques you can do for muscular patients. Would there be techniques of PNF that you would do for nerve-based patients?
Absolutely. So if we've gained any type of range of motion, we can now maybe move that shoulder from 100 degrees, and now we're doing good. We got them up to 130 degrees. Well, within that session, you need to retrain that extra motion that you just gained, right? So I need to be doing either, like you were saying, PNF techniques between 100 and 130 degrees of shoulder flexion, if that's what I gained, and, whether it be a prolonged hold at their end range or using PNF terms, you could do a combination of isotonics. You need to do something to be retraining that new motion, yeah,
that new area. Re-ed everything.
But from a similar point, for the PTs out there, if you're talking about maybe you increase median nerve mobility, right? So maybe you can abduct their arm with their wrist extended from 60 degrees to 30 degrees, well, you can re-ed that same amount of motion at the nerve. So same thing, doing this
through the elbow, the wrist,
working reversals, whatever you want to do. But yes, if you do a great job in the session and you don't re-ed afterwards, chances are they're going to come back in a similar state that they came into.
Just like treating a muscle. If we don't give them something to gain independence, it's going to come right back. Now, that's a great job of explaining us through some evaluation, treatment, and how to re-ed them. What about for home exercise? What are you giving a nerve-based tension or compression patient for home exercise?
Yeah, so typically we're going to give them some nerve glides, right? So we're going to be tensioning that nerve or kind of flossing that nerve in and out of the muscles that we freed up in those ranges. So just like you're saying, if we can abduct now 60 degrees with the wrist extended, well, we need to be doing nerve glide up to those 60 degrees. So you're going to, and it's very patient based, so it's to their symptoms. So as soon as they start to feel a little bit of tension, that's where they're going to. You don't want to push past that barrier.
It's a balance.
Because then it's going to inflame it.
Tension off first, and we can work them towards tension on.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Another just quick thing to point out, there's a lot of, as physical therapists, we see a lot of diagnosis. You know, we already talked about it as adhesive capsulitis being one of the ones I would immediately think of that I want to at least screen the neck. Any shoulder you're going to screen the neck, but definitely some diagnoses where adhesive capsulitis, fibromyalgia, these kind of syndrome type thing, these bucket type syndromes where there's no real objective ways to rule them in. It's just
kind of symptoms categorized to make a syndrome.
Exactly.
Definitely want to look at some nerve-based things.
Yeah, a lot of times it's inflammation of the nerves.
Dura connections are as well. No, that's great. And we've done some studying to give credit to where we're getting a lot of this information from under Bob Elvey and Jack Stagg's courses is where we're learning a lot of this information. So for the PTs out there, if you want to learn more information, check out Jack Stagg's courses and neuropathic pain.
Yeah, so if you have any questions about that, of course, you can always email us, willandmarkshso@gmail.com, comment on the Facebook page. It's a great topic. We could spend a lot more time on it, but especially if you're having pain that maybe it's not getting better with PT or maybe not getting better with whatever you're doing at home, definitely let us know. Maybe we can help. Maybe we can assess the nerves
a
little bit and go from there. All right, moving on. Let's talk about... Boogie, right?
Poor Boogie. He just can't get it. Oh man, what is wrong with his connective tissue? So we just watched the ACL tear, and that's a bummer. Thinking he was going to have a great year with the Lakers, coming off the quad injury and the Achilles injury, and he's just running.
Well, I don't know if we thought he was going to have a great year, and I think the NBA owners also didn't think he was going to have a great year. This is exactly why he didn't get that big contract.
Do you think there's something just bad in his medicals that isn't released? Like they're not allowed to release it, but he's like. They're seeing something that's just making him way more likely. So we watched it, and there's not great footage, so you can't see exactly what's going on in his knee. But he's not planting. It doesn't look like he buckles. It's just he just kind of goes down.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell if he bumped knees or if he landed. It looked like he went into a little bit of valgus, but it did not look extreme. It wasn't like the typical ACL tear that you see. I don't know. What do you think overall? I mean, how much does this affect, is there a chance that Boogie comes back next year?
What are we in right now? This is, so, I mean, he's going to be able to try to do it.
Is the team going to take him? He was having a tough time getting this one-year deal. Now, next year, I mean, it's got to be a veteran minimum, right?
I'm guessing it'll be a veteran minimum, but somebody will give him a shot, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I feel bad for him. I mean, how much does this affect the Lakers at this point?
They said they're going to try to go get Dwight.
Yeah. Good move or bad move? What do you think?
Well, he'll get the whole team onto the BFR bandwagon, and it'll be a lift for the rest of the team. Yeah. Dwight Howard, big proponent of using blood flow restriction therapy.
Yeah, I was reading some articles today just about who the Lakers should target as opposed to Dwight Howard. Yeah. It was 18 guys they should target instead of Dwight Howard, or before Dwight Howard. Some of them were pretty funny. But I think some of them were actually kind of...
Throw them at us. What were the good ones?
Well, Peja Stojakovic, so that's not going to derail their big man, but that's going to give them another shooter.
They need a shooter.
Nene, Chris Bosh. Can they convince Chris Bosh to come back?
Chris Bosh, yeah. Maybe Bill Russell?
Bill Russell could come back. The Zellers, Cody Zeller.
Yeah, I mean, at least you named a couple guys there that still can play a couple minutes. I'm sure Dwight's still really talented. It just seems like he's beat up. It's hard for him to play deep in the season. Just gets injuries going into games.
Yeah. But yeah, sad news for Boogie. All right, so let's go to, we got a question from Charlie from New York.
Where in New York?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Cough up a lung. Where you from? Mossy, son. Ain't nothing nice. I've been a lot of places, but I'm Brooklyn born.
All right, very good, Mark. So we are going to go to Charlie. He says, I want to know from you guys why there are so many home runs this season and last, and whether you think Jayz is selling out Colin Kaepernick.
So that if you didn't catch it, that was a Jayz reference for everybody.
Okay,
it wasn't just
good segue.
Wasn't freestyling. So why are there so many home runs, Will?
The juice in the balls, right?
They're juicing the balls. Justin Verlander is going to be the first pitcher in Major League history to lead the American League in ERA and home runs given up. And he came out and said it. He's like, yeah, they're juicing them.
Yeah.
Chicks dig the long ball. MLB knows home runs put butts in seats, and it's all about putting butts in seats.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm having a pretty fun time watching Yelich, Bellinger, Trout just going at it. I mean, they're all above 40 home runs now. Alonso's in that mix. He hit his 40th.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're going to we're going to change the game. I mean, it's the whole issue with the steroid era. Well, the steroid era wasn't only about health; it was about integrity and.
Yeah, but now you got so many pitchers. I think that the pitchers are not as fundamental as before. You're not hitting your spots quite as well. But, I mean, if you're going to throw in the big leagues, you're throwing at least 96 miles per hour for the majority of pitchers, especially as you get late into the games. If you're not hitting 98, you're probably not in the game. I mean, it's just, I think it's still hard to hit the baseball.
It's still hard to hit the baseball, and that's Scherzer's thing. Like, I don't care if the balls are juiced; they're not going to hit my curveball anyway. So what?
Yeah, exactly. You could put as much steroids into me as you want, juice the balls up. You could probably make the ball much bigger. I'm not hitting a home run.
I know Scherzer's the most competitive in the world, and he wouldn't say it, but I still don't think he'd want to face Barry Bonds 2002. Nobody does.
Yeah, but he's also an incredible athlete. I mean, I think if you're just saying Barry Bonds was taking steroids, no wonder he hit so many home runs. He's still barreling up the bat on them.
He hit 72 at the age of 38, though. I mean, we'd see decline at the age.
Yeah, but do you remember how many intentional walks he got? He maybe got maybe 3 legit swings a game to actually put the barrel on the ball, and he crushed it. Anytime you even tried to get anything close to the strike zone, see you later.
We could go on a side tangent of whether steroids only improve strength, or can they improve things like reflexes and ability to hit the baseball as well. So there could be advantages. That doesn't happen in the case of juicing, but yeah, I mean, if it was a fly out 3 years ago, it might be a home run now. I think that's the reason. I think they should take it to a fan vote. Juice up the balls or bring back the real game.
Yeah, I think the answer clearly somehow they're juicing the ball. I don't really know what that means.
Bring back the game that Mike Greenwell used to play, you know?
All right, so then let's get to the second part of his question. He said whether you think Jayz is selling out Colin Kaepernick. So just a little background information, right? So Jayz owns Rock Nation. And so he partnered with the NFL recently with Rock Nation as the league's live music entertainment strategist, going to be consulting on entertainment and social justice projects. So if we go back to last year, Jayz was a big supporter of Colin Kaepernick. He's on record as saying that he turned down the halftime Super Bowl show, saying that he wasn't in agreement with what the NFL was doing with the racial inequalities with Colin Kaepernick. And now, this year, he is partnering with them. And recently, there is rumors that he is interested in becoming part owner of an NFL team. So, initial thoughts, what do you think? Is he just trying to get on Goodell's good side and have an in to get into the league, or is he trying to make some change? What do you think?
Well, it's clearly just a political move by the NFL, and I feel like they're trying to use Jayz as a pawn a little bit to bridge this gap of people being angry with the NFL for not supporting racial injustices for the kneeling issue. I mean, you can sit on either side of the fence, but did Jayz sell him out? I mean, what did Colin say? But didn't Colin have a comment? What was Colin's comment? I thought we had that.
Well, so Jayz is basically saying that he's got quoted saying, "I think we've moved past the kneeling. I think it's time for action." Right? So he's basically from his perspective, he's saying that Colin Kaepernick did a great job of getting the racial inequalities, the social injustices out into the media, right? Like, that was a huge deal where people were kneeling. It was really upsetting. A lot of people, it doesn't matter where you stand, but you knew what was going on. People were turning into the NFL just to see the anthem. Who's going to kneel, who's not, you know. So he's saying that now that everything's to the surface, NFL has reached out to me and they want my help to make changes and make things better. So he's saying it's time for action. And then Colin Kaepernick came out with a tweet basically saying that my brothers, Eric Reed, Kenny Stills, Albert Wilson, continue to fight for the people even in the face of death threats. They've never moved past the people and continue to put their beliefs into action. Stay strong, brothers. So he's saying that they're...
So, and I stand for and support the national anthem, but as far as the question goes, is Jay-Z selling out Colin Kaepernick? Well, yeah, he is.
How do you figure?
If Kaepernick was the sacrificial lamb for this whole thing, the devil in the deal here is Roger Goodell, and he's making a direct partnership with Roger Goodell in order to improve Roger Goodell and the NFL's public image. I'm with him on moving past things, but to move past it, well, then maybe could we get a new commissioner to help us move past it? What is the NFL actually changing here? The NFL is, it looks to me like the NFL is hiring Jay-Z to make their public image with the racial injustice community look better.
See, I see it differently, right? So if you're Roger Goodell, clearly there are some issues, right? Ratings went down last year, I believe, with people not tuning in that were on the side of...
On both sides.
Yeah. So anyway, so ratings went down, right? So they see clearly there's a problem. Okay, Colin Kaepernick's raising a lot of things. Let's look into these racial injustices, racial whatever you want to call them, right? And saying, I need to do something. Jay-Z is that guy. He's big into social reform. He's big into equality. So can we reach out to him? Can we extend an olive branch saying, hey, we screwed up. We want to make this better. You are a huge figure. Yeah, it definitely helps the NFL. Of course, I'm not just going to get a regular
and
Joe
make
Schmo
tons and tons of money off of it. But Colin Kaepernick is still the guy who got sacrificed. Why isn't he?
So now is the issue becoming away from the kneeling and the racial inequalities, right? The social injustices that he's bringing up, and now it's towards, well, what are we going to do for Colin, right? The issue's turning away from the inequalities and it's going towards, well, Colin. Well, now there's a feud between Colin and Jay-Z.
Yeah, but what is the NFL doing for racial injustice besides?
Well, that's what they're doing. That's what Jay-Z's saying. We're going to get a chance to make changes in the NFL that are going to support. I don't know. Maybe they do missions where they go into poorer neighborhoods or, different...
Maybe that's the case. I'd love to see it when it happens. It sounds like they want to make a lot of money. But as far as the question goes, did he sell it Colin? Yes, he did.
I don't think so. Why does he need Colin's permission to go and try to make a change on his own? But how is it selling him out?
It's still selling him out. He said, hey, bud, I got your back. Wait, no, I'm going to go against the guy who blackballed you.
No, he's saying, hey, I got your back. And he did. Clearly, Jay-Z is into that. Jay-Z doesn't need the money. When they brought out the rumors, which I don't know if they're true, but that he's interested in partnering or joining ownership of an NFL team, I see your point a little bit there. It's like, if he didn't do that, Jay-Z doesn't need the money. So if they're paying him a ton of money, it's like, well, Jay-Z's already, I don't know, billionaire? He makes a ton of money. So I don't see it as like he's going to go against his beliefs to try to make a little bit of money. When they throw in the potential ownership of an NFL team, well, yeah, you got to get voted in by the other NFL owners.
Of course.
And I think Goodell's got to give him your permission. So he does need a little bit of push to get into that.
The owners have the more power in that case than Goodell does. Goodell's just kind of the puppet of the owners. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to have a good outcome for everyone, but he still said, I'm not going to do the NFL halftime show because the NFL wouldn't support you. And then he went and said, I'm going to go partner with the NFL.
But this is the NFL's way of maybe showing some support, saying, hey, we see these are issues. We're going to hire you or bring you on to help us change our policies.
Let's reconvene when we see that happen. I mean, I'm interested to see.
I agree.
So are the people who were in support of it still going to have any level of protest?
Yeah, I would think so. I think there's going to be it's too early to really make decisions. I mean, we're coming at it from two different sides of the spectrum, but I think we both agree that, yeah, even from my end, them bringing on Jay-Z could be a great thing, and maybe they're going to make all these policies change. But if they don't, I mean, they haven't actually done anything yet, right? So they're just agreeing to partner. So until we see some action and actual things changing, I think we're both a little skeptical of what's going to happen.
It's still unusual to me as someone who's Colin Kaepernick being looked at as a social justice figure that Jayz wouldn't. It's unusual to me that he wouldn't discuss it with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like it when I think Colin Kaepernick did such a great job of bringing awareness to the people, whether you like it or not. There's just awareness. But I think as we're starting to get more into it, he's getting older and older. He hasn't played football in a while. I think we need to get away from this idea of like.
I think it's not about a football career. It's about a movement, though.
That's what I'm saying. And when you're bringing in, well, they blackballed Colin Kaepernick, 100% agree. They probably did. But I'm saying at this point now, like, it is what it is, right? The damage is done. Let's try to make some sort of change. Like, do you think he's still blackballed? Or he's, what, 30,
He's 30.
Getting older?
Yeah, no, it's just the old NFL being like mean old NFL. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't. I don't think it has great flavor right now.
Yeah. But we'll see. I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful as well.
Yeah.
We're both in agreement for social justice reform and
exactly.
for the national anthem and our veterans as well. Thank you for your service. We're sort of trying to see the middle ground on this.
Yes. All right. Moving on, let's talk about Antonio Brown. What else can we talk about than Antonio Brown this past week?
Takes from week 2 preseason overall. Antonio Brown's causing headaches for everyone.
Headaches. He's not even wearing a helmet. Of course he's going to get a headache.
He's got the feet and he's got the head. And so when he said he was going to retire because of the helmet, I almost said like, oh, if I was Raiders GM there, the recruiting guy, or if I was Gruden, I would have been like, oh, thank God you got bad feet already. We gave you all this money. If you can retire, we'll take that money back, put it somewhere we'll actually use it. And he's not showing up to. He didn't show up to practice today because he doesn't like the helmet still.
Here's a question for you, Mark. Do you think Antonio Brown's feet were bad prior to him joining the Raiders? Or was it just a boneheaded move to step into a cryo chamber that gets you negative 200
Did we already talk
degrees?
about cryo chamber? Did we have this discussion yet?
I don't think
So
we did.
we didn't talk about the cryo chamber. So just explain what a cryo chamber is. It's a machine that goes to negative 200 degrees. Everyone who goes into it, the idea is it's going to cause this cold shock proteins and this response that will be healing to your body. But everyone who goes in wears these thick Ugg-like boots and big oven mitt mittens. And Antonio Brown, what do you go in? Just like his
Bare feet is
gym
what they're
socks? It's
So
not
you
a good
get
move.
frostbite, and now you can't.
If
run
that's
on
even
your-
the case, or maybe it's just all like smoke screens because he doesn't want to be on Hard Knocks, or he doesn't like the helmet. Apparently, the helmet does disrupt some part of his view. I've heard some other players complain about it too, but he's the only one sitting out because of it. And he's on a new team who he needs to build rapport with. I'd be livid if I was one of his teammates.
So he did come out with this this week. So the owner was saying, at this point in the season, he needs to be all in or all out. Like, we can't have him just being wishy. Are you going to play? Are you going to find a helmet and play or not? And he wrote back that, he is still unhappy about the situation, but he is invested into the team.
But he hasn't shown up. Apparently, the issue is the helmet again and not the feet, as of
Right,
today.
yeah, it's all about the helmet. So he's actually reached out to his, I don't know, however many followers he has on social media, and he's trying to get a 2010 version of the helmet that he's been using his whole career.
I don't even think that might not solve the problem still. He might get that helmet. It still might not be acceptable. I don't know.
Oh, by the NFL standards, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying I don't know. And he's
Yeah.
going to sue the NFL now if he gets a concussion in the new helmet.
I mean, I don't know the rules of the helmet, but I would think you'd be able to customize your helmet to really whatever you want as long as it fits within the safety standards of the NFL. I don't know though.
Maybe that's
I'm
what
just
they're
throwing it
arguing
out
over
there.
now, but it's too much of a headache for me.
Okay. Let's go week 2, right?
Yeah.
Preseason week 2. What are your biggest takeaways?
I like Jerry Jones saying, Zeke who? After seeing Tony Pollard rip off a couple big runs. The offensive line, we know Zeke Elliott's a great player, but we talk a lot about how the position of running backs that'll devalued in the NFL, it's not worth paying him a lot of money. You put in a guy who had 400 rushing yards last year at the University of Memphis, and he goes for 50 yards on 4 carries behind the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. So is Zeke really going to be worth paying $14-15 million a year? Zeke apparently was upset that Jones said Zeke who. I want to support him at the same time, but I think Jerry's right. Zeke who? Plug in a guy from Memphis. Not Memphis NFL. Memphis Tigers last year rushed for 400 yards behind Darrell Henderson, and he takes off for you.
They brought in, Alfred Morris, too?
Alfred Morris, yep.
It's kind of a backup plan. Personally, I think he's worth $15 million. I think he's worth really whatever. I think he's the backbone of that team. I know your stance on running backs.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay a running back.
He is at least top 2 overall rushing running backs, right?
Yeah.
Give the guy his money. He's a beast. You're going to get him for 2 more years at such a cheap...
It's perfect. It's perfect because this is just like a perfect parallel between the two of us. You are exactly like the GM of the New York Jets, and I'm exactly like the GM of the New England Patriots. And when it comes down to it, you've got to pay the players the positions that are most important. Quarterback, left tackle, cornerback.
So you would rather give Dak Prescott $40 million than give Zeke 15?
Well, now you're doing value comparisons. Dak Prescott is a top 15 NFL quarterback, where Zeke is a top 2 NFL running back. So I'm not sure Dak's worth that amount of money either.
So you're the Cowboys GM. Why don't you just cut the whole team? You got, Pollard and Morris, they just run the ball every time, right?
Or you just follow the transcript of what people have been doing in the new NFL right now since the Seahawks set it up, is you draft a good young quarterback, hope you hit on him, and then you bolster the defense for a couple of years, protect him, and you make a couple Super Bowl runs with that, like they did with Russell Wilson, like Lamar Jackson's trying to do with the Baltimore Ravens. That's the mold of trying to do it. Get a cheap quarterback and see if you can win a Super Bowl in that window. If you give Dak $40 million and you give Zeke, what's he want, 15 a year for? I mean, 15 on Zeke, 40 million on Dak. There's literally just you're going to lose your whole offensive line. You're not going to be able to re-sign Tyrone Smith, the center. You're going to lose all these guys.
I agree. Everything with what you said about the quarterback situation in Dallas. You could get cheaper quarterback that I think would be just as productive, potentially a little bit more productive, maybe a little less.
Probably less. But if you're hedging your bets on 40 million versus 1 million, then yeah, I'll hedge my bets.
Yeah, I thought they offered him 30 million. I thought that was even right there a little steep. I thought Dak should have taken that for sure.
But if you're asking me, I'd still rather pay Dak over Zeke. I'd rather pay like a below average quarterback over a good running back.
But you're just talking about demand. I mean, if Dak Prescott, the demand for a quarterback is so much higher than the demand for a running back, well, then if I'm Dak Prescott, I'm saying somebody's going to overpay for me because there's only 20 quarterbacks in the league.
There's a New York Jets out there for every money-hungry player that exists.
But I think what we're starting to see, I think if Zeke holds out now, right? And he's in a tougher situation because he has to hold out this year, and then he'd have to hold out again next year if they choose not to.
No, even that, I think he would get gypped on, and that I think it would just add another year on his contract. I think Zeke is going to have to report by week 8. Remember we had that week last week where Le'Veon was supposed to report, but I never thought it would be there. I think it's week 8. I think Zeke's going to have to do that in order to not lose a year on the contract that he's currently on.
But he could easily report, fake an injury, whatever. There's ways to get out of that.
Yeah. The old Roger Clemens did that to the Red Sox when he wanted to trade. It's just like, all right, I'll lob a couple in there.
Yeah.
Trade me.
But, yeah, if they trade him, they could get good value for Zeke. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I don't know how much. What do you think? Second rounder?
Second rounder?
It's a running back that you have to pay $15 million. Nobody wants to pay. It's not that he's not good. It's that
whoever. We're talking about a game-changing running back. There's only maybe 4 of them, maybe 5, in the NFL that can take a team and just carry them. And I would say he's the top tier of those 5.
And yet the Pittsburgh Steelers just decided to not do that last year. You don't think they were trying to trade him and they couldn't get a third rounder for him? That's what was going on.
Yeah, I think comparing Zeke to Le'Veon's, they 2 different running styles, right? Like, I'm interested to see how Le'Veon Bell's running style works in New York.
They're in the same wheelhouse still, though.
Zeke pounds you. He just goes right out. He's not waiting around for anything. He shoots the gaps and he runs right through you. Speaking of running right through you, can we talk about Byron Cowart of your Patriots?
The Terp?
The Terp.
Don't put him in the corner. Ran somebody over.
He's not close to a corner. He's running straight at you.
One last point on the last one. Ask me how happy the Los Angeles Rams are that they paid Todd Gurley $15 million a year right now, knowing that he's going to drop carries and he's got an arthritic knee. It's a problem.
Where the guys like me and you have more value then in maybe a GM standpoint, maybe a little advice, huh? Injury standpoint?
Yes.
Listen to the podcast. GMs, subscribe.
Yes. We want who's the Raiders GM? Mike Mayock. Mike Mayock got hired as a commentator guy from ESPN. Maybe we could build up a reputation where a podcast guy would get hired as a GM. Could do better than the Jets, maybe. Cardinals look awful. Kyler looked bad. It's the worst offensive line in the NFL. I still think Kyler can run away from some of that and still put up some numbers.
And I think you're expecting there to be kind of signs of good play, signs of bad play with,
they were bad last year. Oh, yeah.
Or just Murray in general.
Right. The good news with a running quarterback is if the offensive line's bad, you can run away from it a little bit.
Yeah.
But,
how about the backup quarterbacks looking pretty good?
Everybody looks good.
Hill, Jacoby Brissett.
And the third string there in Indianapolis looks great too. Everyone knows that he can play. Chad Kelly.
Right.
With all the off the field issues, but he looks like an NFL caliber quarterback if he can stay sober and keep it together.
And now we're potentially talking about week 1 starters there in Indianapolis. So Brissett and Kelly are actually playing for potentially starting job right now.
Luck warmed up the other day, and because of the shoulder history, it makes me so nervous, but I'm thinking more and more that we're probably going to be okay with Luck. I'm not betting on it by any chance, but I'm thinking more and more we're going to be okay.
Yeah, he has a lot of potential there, but at least there's good signs for Indianapolis that they got some backups that can play a bit.
Oh yeah, one of the best backups and one of the best third strings.
Josh Gordon.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like maybe 3 or 4 months ago we could have been talking about the Patriots having the worst wide receiving core in the NFL and the worst that Tom Brady's ever had. Now I'm flip-flopping. It's almost the opposite to me. I don't know who they're going to cut. They have 7 guys that are must-keeps. Edelman has to be on the team. You've got Gordon's going to be on the team. First-round pick N'Keal Harry is going to be on the team. Jacoby Meyer, undrafted rookie out of North Carolina State, has been Tom Brady's top target in preseason and practice so far. He honestly looks unbelievable. They can't cut him. He'd definitely get picked up. Matthew Slater is a captain on special teams. They always fit in as a wide receiver. You got Demaryius Thomas maybe coming back at some point. Did I say Maurice Harris is a guy who's looked great. I think he might be one of the odd men out, but I love him. I'm going to be a homer on this. I love all the Patriots receivers right now. Watch out for Jacoby Myers. He might be my favorite player in preseason right now. Very excited. Lots of depth on this Patriots wide receiver staff.
Yeah, you sound like a homer for sure.
Okay, talk about homers. Let's talk about Lamar's move over the weekend.
Lamar?
Yeah, Jackson's juke.
Well, holding though.
Who cares? It's preseason. It wasn't going to count either way, so it might as well look really cool.
No, he looks great. Yeah. And he hasn't really had to run that much yet. So that was kind of his first time. I think he had a couple rushes that game. But he's trying to do it with his arm, and he's actually looked decent. He's definitely controlling the team down the field. We haven't seen much of the triple option, which I thought we would see. But maybe they're just waiting for that for the regular season. Don't want to kind of show their cards too early.
Sure.
But everybody looks good.
Bummer, Derwin James has a stress fracture in his foot. He's having surgery for it. There's no details released beyond that right now, but foot surgeries at this time of year aren't usually good. He might be done they're saying 3-4 months. He might be done for the year.
Yeah.
One of the strongest rookies last year, looking like a beast at safety.
Can we go back to Josh Gordon for a sec?
Of course.
So, suspended over and over and over and over and over again.
Correct.
And now they're letting him back in. I'm a huge fan of his athletic abilities.
Yep.
Not a huge fan of how the NFL keeps handling his situation. There's a couple guys. So, we went to the whole Rock Nation. We kind of had that discussion.
Yep.
I don't like what the NFL is doing with Tyreek Hill. I don't like what they're doing with Josh Gordon. I feel like they're going out and saying, we're going out on getting Rock Nation. We're working on social injustice, all these things. And then you get these two situations. They're being very lenient on him, right? Like no suspension for Tyreek Hill. Are you kidding me?
Well, I think Tyreek's issue came from the fact that they just didn't have any evidence. But it's also two very different situations when we're talking about domestic abuse and we're talking about substance abuse. Wherein the reason that they've come out and been more lenient on Gordon than they have in anyone in the past is because they're changing in a way where it's come through a lot of the discussions of Gordon is that he had some mental health issues, and substance abuse is related to his mental health issues. So I think that the reason that they've continued to give him second chances is because they know he's trying to work through these things, and they want to show that they have an understanding of mental health. So on the Gordon side, I'd say it's completely different than when we're looking at the domestic abuse, which they still have a pretty no-tolerance policy on. But, Gordon's abuse has been related to mental health issues, and they're saying if you're willing to get help, even though we know you've abuse substances that are not allowed in the NFL, we want you to get the help. I still think it's probably his last chance, regardless.
We've gone down this road before. Last year we were saying the same exact thing.
Correct.
So I just feel like we're giving too much. Like, maybe prove, stay sober for a year, and then we'll let you in next year. Or, we're willing to support you in any way possible. How good of a story would that be for the NFL? Looking for positive publicity. We're going to sponsor Josh Gordon. We're going to do everything possible to get him sober, regardless whether he comes back into the NFL or not. We care about our players before or during their time and after their time. This is a brotherhood, whatever you want to.
No, I think that's exactly what they're doing, though. I think I think one of the ones he actually self-reported that he relapsed and said, I just want to get help, and he went to a facility to get help. And I think the NFL just saw that as as opposed to immature thing to do and lack discipline and lapse with drug abuse. They saw it as a mature, more professional thing to do. That he knew he screwed up and he wanted to get help, and that's where he's been until basically until now.
Yeah, and I don't have anything against Josh Gordon personally. I just think the way that the NFL handles the situation, there should be a heavier sentence for him. Show more proof before we just let you back in.
Yeah, they're getting lighter on pot in general, and we don't know everything he tested positive for, but I'm of the standpoint where if he's willing to go get the help, once he's gotten the help, I don't know the timing on that, but it takes a long time to get help. I would stand by, let's continue to give this guy a second chance if he's willing to continue to go through it and get the help.
Now, you're right. The Tyreek Hill situation is completely different.
Yep.
Now we're talking domestic abuse. We're talking about child abuse.
Yep.
And also threatening abusing his girlfriend. But even so, no proof, like you're saying. I mean, there's audio tapes we've all kind of heard. Definitely, there seems to be something was going on, right? The NFL, it does not have any legal standpoint, right? So it doesn't matter that he was found innocent or that they don't have proof from a legal standpoint. The way that he's representing the NFL and all the publicity that's going around him, they could suspend him for whatever they want to do. They don't have to go by just strictly legal. We saw that with Ray Rice.
No, yeah, they don't.
Right. So to give him nothing is a joke to me. I mean, we're saying that he potentially pushed a child down the stairs.
Well, they interviewed it, and it came out that he wasn't there when the kid went down the stairs. So I'm not. I from what I've heard about Tyreek Hill, he's not a good guy. But in this particular situation, it's really up in the air. If you do all he said, she said, you have no law or rule either. So you can't just say any accusation that comes out, you're going to suspend a guy for it.
Threatened his girlfriend on the audio file.
Yeah, I didn't hear the actual audio file. He's never had anything in the NFL that's come up as an issue. Everything was pre-draft. I'm with you on.
Give him something. Even just if you create negative publicity, even if you didn't do it, but you're still somehow connected to that situation, the NFL could take a strong stance and say, like, they're trying to get a positive spin on all this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're just not, I feel like they're not going about it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a slippery slope to create penalties for people that you really don't know what happened. I think there are more straightforward ones where it was more obvious. The Kareem Hunt video and things like that, we saw things. But I mean, basically the allegation was that he broke his arm, son, and threw him down the stairs. And they were able to prove through doctor's visits and the doctor saying when the fracture happened that he just wasn't there. So the allegation on that case was probably not correct. I'm not saying that means he's a saint and he didn't do something wrong at a different time. But I don't know how you how do you suspend someone if they're literally able to prove, like, I was in a different time zone when that happened.
Yeah, I don't know. There just seems like there's a lot of loose ends in that case. Maybe we need to review that case a little bit.
They'll suspend Tom Brady on anything that's willy-nilly.
Suspend Tom Brady?
He doesn't have to be anywhere near footballs for them to get deflated, and he gets a suspension for it.
Yeah, let's not go down that route. All right, what else do we want to talk about from week 2? Did we cover everything? Curtis Samuel, looking really good. Taysom Hill.
Yep.
Looks really good, throwing the ball.
Curtis Samuel's beat writer saying that every week, every day at training camp, there is one play that just makes everyone go in awe.
All right. Let's get to NFC West.
Okay.
So last year, Rams won the division at 13-3, Seahawks 10-6, 49ers 4-12, and Cardinals 3-13.
Sure.
What do you see different this year?
I think it's about the same, with the 49ers probably taking a little bit of a step forward. I've got Rams 13-3 again, Seahawks 9-7, 49ers bumping it up to 7-9, Cardinals status quo at 5-11. I might want to move them down. We actually did this before the game this weekend, so maybe you're not 5-11 after watching the offensive line.
Yeah, so I had Rams 13-3 or 12-4. Sorry, Seahawks 10-6 again, and then I had Cardinals 5-11, 49ers 4-12. So we differed a bit on
the Niners.
The Niners, yep.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, what are the big fantasy names that you got going on in this division?
Well, we already touched on Todd Gurley a little bit with the Zeke issues. You touching Gurley at all this year?
I don't want anything to do with him. I hope he comes out and plays great. But at the ceiling, he's going to be on a snap count. So they're looking at 15 snaps, probably not 15 snaps, 15 touches a game for him. With Malcolm Brown playing a little bit more, and they drafted Henderson, the rookie, who, by the way, was the starter over Tony Pollard, who looked really good in Dallas. He was showing up Tony Pollard at Memphis, and Pollard looks good in Dallas. They wanted him to run the Chris Thompson role in this offense, so he'll probably take up a lot of the third down work, and if Gurley does have any injuries, maybe we'll see a split between him and Brown. But yeah, so at your ceiling, you're seeing a Todd Gurley with limited touches, and at your floor, we saw him wear down last year. We know how bad his knee injury was in college, and it's been reported he has the arthritic knee. So on the floor, does he miss a lot of games does he just swell up a little bit? From a fantasy standpoint, I love the guy, but from a fantasy standpoint, the risk does not outweigh the reward. I know people are still taking him like second round right now. Like for me, it'd be so far down, I'm never going to get him.
Right. Let's talk about, they have a great receiving core, right? Cooper Kupp,
and they split
Robert
it pretty even.
Woods, Brandon Cooks.
Those are the three you want.
Out of those three, who do you like the most?
I'd be
PPR or non-PPR?
I'd give Kupp a boost in PPR. I'm pretty split on Cooks or Woods. I go Woods PPR, Cooks. I would say, okay, here we go. This is tough. Okay, Cooks is my non-PPR guy. Woods is my 0.5 PPR guy, and Kupp is my PPR guy.
Really?
But I like Kupp's coming off the ACL, so he's supposed to have looked great. But he was really good with Goff last year. I want all three of these guys. They're all underrated. They're all guys that people, for some reason, don't think are big names, and they kind of go underdrafted. Any one of these guys have literally top 12 receiver potential.
Yeah, I like, out of those three guys, I like Cooks the most. And then probably Kupp. If Kupp comes back to his form last year, he's going to be good.
One of the reasons I like Woods is because he was so not flashy in Buffalo, and he snuck in 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns last year.
Are we thinking so with Gurley on a snap count, and potentially, are we thinking that they're going to be running the ball less and their receivers are going to be even better this year?
No, I don't think so.
About the same game plan?
I think they give the rock to the other guys a little bit more.
Okay.
And I think Henderson can do it all. I heard they want to use him as Chris Thompson, but I really think if they need him on first and second down, he'll be able to do it.
Yeah. What do you think of their defense?
It's one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to the Seahawks. They got the great rookie that you like, DK Metcalf.
Yeah, I hate DK Metcalf, and
not personally, just as
we've discussed this before. You like him, right?
I think he's a phenomenal athlete. I don't think he's going to be great immediately, but potentially in a dynasty league or where you're keeping players for a long time, he could end up being a great player.
He had surgery today to clean up a little bit of meniscus, and he was hurt last year in college. He's just like one of those big biceps guys that runs down the field 4.3 super fast speed that I don't ever see play great. Like he was a number 2 receiver on his team in college. He got hurt his senior year. He's hurt now. It just runs down the kind of road of one of those guys where I at this point I want to see it before I believe it.
Generally speaking, so the Seahawks are on record as saying they want to run the ball more than any other team, right?
Yep.
So receiver-wise, Tyler Lockett, David Moore, DK Metcalf, I'm probably not drafting a wide receiver too high up from this team just because there's not going to be as many opportunities as some other teams.
Lockett's rising higher and higher to me for the exact opposite reason than Metcalf is just because he does prove it, and he is now the only receiver. He's going to get peppered. He had a great year last year. Was he a top 12? He was very close to top 12 receiver last year that loses Doug Baldwin. And the only guy they brought in to replace him is Metcalf, who's, maybe out week 1. They'll throw to the running backs a lot. I like Lockett a lot. I would put him in. He's an easy pick in round 5. I'm pushing him towards round 4.
My guy, who I think is going to have a better year than what he's kind of projected to be, is Chris Carson.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's way under ADP.
He's going to get the rock like 25 times a game.
Maybe not that many. I think him and Penny are going to be in a 60-40 or something like that. But yeah, he's going to get the ball a lot, and he's going to catch the ball more this year.
Yeah, I think Carson's the guy to have.
Carson's definitely the guy to have. If you get him, I really like to get Penny too, because if one of the two gets hurt, then you got a top 5 guy.
Well, that's what you're doing in your best ball leagues, right?
Yeah, you want them both, because if one of them goes down, you've got a top 5 guy. And even if they don't, you're going to have one of the two probably go off every week.
Yeah. What do you think of their defense?
It's not the defense of yesteryear for the Seahawks.
Gotcha.
They're not as good as they used to be.
Okay.
Like we said with quarterbacks, they finally had to pay their quarterback, and now they can't pay other positions.
Any interest in Russell Wilson? They're not going to throw the ball often. You want him?
No, he doesn't run anymore.
Yeah.
It's super down on Russell Wilson.
Arizona Cardinals, starting off, Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I still want him, but
It's got good value.
yeah.
Well, depending, I guess, when people are high on him. So
People are excited to take him. He's gonna if he passes for 3,500 yards and 25 touchdowns and rushes for 800 more yards, that 800 yards equals 23 more yards passing. So compared to Phillip Rivers, who runs 0, that's like equaling him to 5,800 yards passing. It's unbelievable value for somebody who might throw the ball 60 times a game. If he's at 50% passer, if he's throwing at completion percentage at 50%, that's still 30 completions a game. That's 300 yards. I mean, it's just the way they want to run that offense. Even if they're bad, they could still put up good fantasy numbers.
So if they're throwing the ball 60 times a game, out of the receiving crew, you got Larry Fitzgerald, rookie Andy Isabella, Christian Kirk, Kevin White they brought in. They always injured Kevin White. Pharaoh Cooper, Hakeem Butler. Who you got is kind of wanting in that receiving core?
I think Kirk takes a step forward, and you see reliable old David Johnson being needed in the dump-off. And Kingsbury's offense, is the knock on David Johnson is that he used a lot of running backs in them, and he wouldn't run a lot outside the red zone. But one thing you did see is a lot of dump-off passes. Maybe David Johnson, with his bad offensive line, still catches 100 passes. And
is he a top 5 guy?
I'm afraid of him because I'm afraid of the offensive line right now. I'm really afraid of the rushing. I think he's going to catch a lot of passes. If he gets the goal line work.
What would be the lowest you take him? Earliest you take him in a draft?
Earliest I take him.
You pass him up at 6?
It depends on how I feel that day. If I'm having like a shaky day, I don't want to touch him. But if I'm feeling really confident that day, maybe 7.
7, wow. He's projected to go sooner.
Yeah, I know. But I just think it's safer to go with the stud receivers there. They're not going to get hurt, and you know their value. And behind this offensive line, it's getting a little scary.
How much does the Patrick Peterson suspension hurt the defense?
A lot, considering that Alfred broke his leg too. Peterson's not back till week 7. Alfred's out for at least 6 weeks. If you have any receiver going against the Cardinals in the first 6 weeks, start him. I think the Ravens do have him at some point. Week one, that's Detroit. Sleeper, you miss on all quarterbacks and your streaming quarterbacks. Start Matt Stafford week 1. He's going to go off. They've got no defense to defend any type of passing game.
All right, last but not least, let's go 49ers. So Garoppolo's back, coming off the injury.
Jimmy's struggled a little bit in preseason here.
What do you think? Worth owning?
Yeah, I'd take him as a sleeper.
So he's going to be your second quarterback you drafted.
If I've taken a guy like Jimmy, I'm usually taking 2 guys in, like him. I'll pair him with Lamar.
Okay, I think Lamar has very good upside.
I think Jimmy has good upside too. I think Lamar's upside's even greater.
Yeah,
but I think Jimmy's floor is a little better.
Yeah. All right. How about obviously tight end George Kittle?
Great year last year.
Yep. Where do you see him going?
He's going early 3.
Early 3?
Mid 3.
Yeah. I think Kittle looks incredible, especially this offseason. I think if I was going to make any bold prediction, I'd say Kittle. I don't know if I'm willing to say that he's going to have a better year than Kelsey, because Kelsey is a monster and he's in a better offensive system and he's proven it a little bit more than Kittle. But I think Kittle is going to be right up there with him.
Sure.
I think when you go back to it, I think Kittle's going to be like, man, I could have easily justified taking Kittle first round, early second round. Sure. Kind of when Kelsey's going too.
Kittle averaged 80 yards a game. It's unheard of in the NFL for a tight end. It's going to be hard to repeat. My knock on Kittle is that we've never seen the touchdowns. Even his college career, we didn't see the touchdowns. Why don't we see the touchdowns? We say touchdowns are fluky, but there's some guys like, why don't we see him with Julio? Why don't we see him with Kittle? So I don't know if his touchdown upside is the same as Kelsey's, but also maybe he's just never had the right offense for it. And Jimmy G is a lot better than Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard, we think. But it's also, you always throw in a curveball when it's a new quarterback too. What does Jimmy G like to utilize the tight end the way that those guys did? So I think the risk is higher where I justify their ADPs. I strongly feel Kelsey will outperform Kittle this year.
I think most quarterbacks like to throw to a wide open monster in the middle of the field.
Yeah, well, why don't they throw him in the end zone? I mean, I don't know.
It's coming.
Okay.
How often was Nick Mullins getting into the red zone? He was catching like 80-yard touchdown passes when he got him. So he didn't get in the red zone that often.
Most of Kittle's touchdowns were, I don't know if he caught one inside the red zone. I think they all came
bombs.
Yeah,
because that's how you get.
He also
into
led.
the end zone
I think he also led the NFL on passes called back too.
Yeah. All right, let's go to wide receivers. They got Dante Pettis, Marquise Goodwin, Kendrick Bourne, rookie Hurts, Debo.
The mix of it not panning out who it was going to be. It looked like Pettis early on. Now Debo and even Richie James coming on. Marquise Goodwin still there. I don't like the receivers just because I can't pick at this point. One guy who had the 2 touchdowns in week 1, Jalen Hurd, converted running back at Tennessee, that converted to receiver at Baylor. That they thought Shanahan may have overdrafted. I think it was a 3rd or 4th round pick. Is a little exciting that he's a chess piece that can play running back, tight end, receiver. That really kind of looks like one of these fun pieces for a Kyle Shanahan system. He might play some joker tight end, see him in the slot. I don't know if it'll be his rookie year, but I hope they use him. He could be really exciting. Big, strong, fast guy, 6'3", 4", 235, and can move.
Yeah, I think the wide receivers all have upside because they're not going that high. But Garoppolo could be amazing. And if Garoppolo is as good as what we thought he would be a couple years ago or even last year before he got hurt, I mean, they could have better years than what they're projected for. They've got some good value.
In Shanahan's system, we know they love to throw to the running back.
And then
right
defense,
now,
what are you thinking with their defense? Sorry?
Oh, no, that's okay. Bosa's hurt. We'll see if they can come together. Just on the running backs, I like Coleman right now. Of course, Breida was great last year. I think Coleman's just a better athlete than him. We saw that McKinnon got a PRP injection in his knee. He had an ACL reconstruction about 11 and a half months ago. So if we're seeing a PRP injection at this point, PRP injections we know are inflammatory to stimulate healing. Not a great sign at 11 and a half months. Hopefully that does help finish up and see healing. But if we're not seeing him play in preseason and there's questions for game 1, then it puts me really on the Tevin Coleman bandwagon.
Well, what are your thoughts? So if we go Tevin Coleman, so last year he's with the Falcons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Playing as kind of a 3rd down back to Freeman.
Sure. When
Freeman was healthy. So now you got kind of a 3rd down, a little bit smaller back in Tevin Coleman taking on 1st down, 2nd down responsibilities, and now you take McKinnon potentially out of there. So Coleman could be kind of your all-purpose back.
Well, that's why Shanahan went out of his way to sign Coleman. Shanahan was his coach in Atlanta. He was his offensive coordinator. I think he just loves the guy.
But do you see any increased maybe injury risk to a guy like Coleman getting an increased workload and kind of, these 3rd down running backs, smaller, fast receivers now taking on more and more carries? Does that concern you at all? Yeah,
I don't really buy into size relating to necessarily injury. I don't think Coleman's that little. He's got 210, 215. Just click on him. It'll pop up if you click his name. 206. Okay, so yeah, he is a little
5'11",
bit.
206. Yeah.
Not a big guy. Jamar Charles was 199 pounds.
Yeah, he had no injuries, right?
Well, until the end of his. You're remembering the end of his career when he fell apart, but that was when he was 30 years old. I don't generally prescribe that just smaller guys get hurt necessarily more often.
Okay. Why? Where's Tevin going?
Round 5.
Why?
Actually, he's going later in some. Because people are just afraid of the 3-headed monster of him, McKinnon, and Breida. I'm taking him. I think people think round 5 is high. I'm taking him right there because I'm guessing he's the guy. I could be totally wrong. It could just be the 3-headed monster that we're worried about, but I've got a little more faith in it than other people.
Yeah. Okay. No, sounds good. So again, we talked about neuropathic pain, talked about a little bit of basketball, football, NFC West. Email us, willandmarkshso@gmail.com.
Right.
We have a Facebook page.
We're also starting an HSO fantasy football league this week. And if you listen quick this week, we're going to try to get it started by this weekend. If you want to email us in at Will and Mark's HSO. at gmail.com and give us a reason that you want to be in the league. We might bring you into the league.
That's right. So we're going to start having some side segments where we'll probably have just some podcasts based on fantasy, more health-based things, more kind of like what we're doing now. But we're going to start incorporating different segments onto the podcast, and we'll be looking for feedback. And definitely this fantasy is going to be, the fantasy league will be part of that.
Beautiful.
So it should be fun.
Okay.
All
Over
right.
and out.
Over and out.